Hey everyone, I'm here with Tim Gray. He's the UK's leading biohacker, and I very much respect all the biohacking he's been doing over the past years. He's very big on Instagram, and he leads the very popular Health Optimisation Summit. I spoke at the Health Optimisation Summit last year, and I'm going to be going again this year. And it's an amazing summit with lots of great biohackers there. I'm bringing Tim on to the podcast so that he can enlighten me on what are his top biohacks and what he does to become optimal. His Instagram, he's very popular on Instagram. His handle is Tim Biohacker. So let's get started, Tim. And my first question is, how did you get into healthcare?
Through sickness care, which is, I guess, a common way for a lot of us biohackers. I started getting sick, and the doctors just shrugged their shoulders and gave me more medicines. And I'm kind of like, something's not quite right here. I don't know what's, they're like, just take this tablet and you should be okay. Or, oh, we don't understand what this is or why. But, kind of like, well, I go to a doctor to really figure out how to stop this from happening, not just take a pill. And it kind of went on for like a year or so of where I kept on having things going on and they just didn't seem to know what was going on. And all the tests came back normal and I wasn't. From a high achiever running multiple companies to not being able to get out of bed and being depressed and getting sicker and sicker, really. And then I guess the turning point was just, 1 week I was in the doctor's every single day and I got to know the receptionist by first name basis, and I'd pick up the call and say, hey, Sue, it's me. Can I come on in again, please? And I kind of like went in that day and I realized that when I said to him, how can you help me? He shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't know, Tim. We've done everything we can. And I just felt like a lost cause. So, on the way back.
How old were you? How old were you at this point?
32, 33, something like that. Yeah, so
33. And how old are you now?
43.
43. So it's about 10 years ago you started to get these debilitating health issues that were significantly affecting your performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you feel like you were performing in your 20s? You feel like
amazing.
you were good?
Amazing. I mean, I'm very dopamine dominant. So I chase goals like crazy. I was bouncing from one thing to the next. I was really driven. Nothing would get in my way. Whatever my goal was, I was going for it. And that was building companies at the time. But I kind of neglected the body. I mean, I didn't really drink enough water or proper water. I didn't get any nature. I was eating crap food and expecting to be okay. And as you know, when you're younger, your body works a lot easier. You can drink, you don't get hangovers and things like that. And there's this kind of compound effect in a negative spiral of all these things that built up over the years until my body went, enough's enough, dude. It's time to wake up. So that's really, again, part of my business strategy is always using Post-it notes for everything. And I write down things, put them on the Post-it notes, stick them up on the wall and figure out, the root cause of a business issue. I just did the same with my health until I realized, here's all the things that I should be doing that they just don't seem to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So give me some of the top things you're trying to optimize about your health.
It's a really good question. So originally it started with, I was forming kidney stones and at quite a quick rate, actually. It was one of the first things. And I had IBS because I had antibiotics for so long. And I was peeing 30 to 50 times a day, which is just insane and very, very stressful because you had to be near a toilet all the times.
That should reduce the risk of kidney stones, I feel.
Yeah, kind of yes and no, because when I looked into it in further detail, yes, you're right. More water means more diluted blood, which means less chance of building up kidney stones. But the problem is why are you peeing 30 to 50 times in a day anyway? And that was due to mineral imbalances. As you know, certain minerals help us retain water and other ones help us excrete water. So basically, I wasn't getting the right minerals in my diet or from my water, thus peeing more. And I found out when I added potassium in, actually, it stopped me peeing so much. It helped me retain the water. The irony is when you drink more water, you need to pee more. And the more you need to drink, the more you pee out and the more mineral deficient you actually become if you're drinking low mineral water. So that was just one of the things that I did, and I fixed that within 3 or 4 days. And doctors said, no, there's nothing we can do. We don't understand. Functional practitioners said exactly the same. We don't understand. And I started testing mineral by mineral, the common ones, to see which would affect it. And potassium was the one for me. So that was one example. Within 4 or 5 days, that was it. The issue was gone for good.
The kidney stones.
The frequent urination. And then
okay.
As a result of that, I then looked into why kidney stones actually form and why I would have mineral imbalances, and it came down to gut issues. So then I started tracking the gut and looking at the microbiome and what I was excreting in my urine to see if I had leaky gut or gut permeability issues, which actually it turns out that due to liver stress, you don't break down or excrete oxalates properly. The oxalates bind to minerals, which then dehydrate you from the inside out. Those oxalates then naturally form in the blood and in the kidneys, which cause kidney stones. So it's kind of like gut stress, liver stress, and this is from all the pharmaceuticals and antibiotics I was taking, which actually then had a knock-on effect to create such a negative spiral that I was peeing so much. So really it was fixing one thing at a time until actually I repaired the gut and stopped having this issue. So touch wood.
Let's go a little deeper in there. How does the gut issues cause kidney stones exactly?
So this is so when your liver is stressed, you produce different types of bile salts. Okay. And so anyway, you do, but when the liver is stressed, it creates different biles or less bile. So that's one thing. Another thing is when you have antibiotics, it kills off obviously certain types of gut bacteria that often can't be replaced. And one specifically is Oxalobacter fermenges. Oxalobacter fermenges breaks down oxalates so that you excrete them properly. Now, I actually test for almost zero on that, and I've tried to find a source of actually buying Oxalobacter fermenges. You can't. There's one company that's making it, but it's very difficult to get hold of. So repopulating the gut with the correct foods, with the right probiotics, specifically based on your testing, and to see how to rebalance this. So that's one element. The other thing is because of liver stress from pharmaceuticals or day-to-day life, for instance, living in a city where it's polluted air and you're drinking polluted water and crappy processed food with all the different chemicals in it, stresses your liver. Your liver can't process at the rate it should do, because it's having up to 100 times the amount of toxins to deal with on a daily basis than we would do in a whole lifetime, ancestrally speaking. So our livers then become quite stressed. Now, on top of that, as you know, things like MTHFR gene, SNP, or MTRR, or any of the detox genes, then mean that your liver isn't detoxing at the fast enough rate or correctly in the first place. And so for me, I actually have the double SNP in MTHFR. So therefore, I'm not necessarily detoxifying properly in the first place. So for me, something like having a sauna or a hot magnesium bath twice a week is imperative unless I know that those genes need optimizing with the right protocol. So on top of these pharmaceuticals, on top of living in a city with the smoky air, on top of these poor foods, on top of that is the genetic component. And therefore, I didn't know, and it's the perfect storm. So that means that the liver then gets more stressed. As a result, your hydrochloric acid, stomach acid, might be down-regulated because of the dehydration, for instance, because, as we know, sodium chloride converts into be hydrochloric acid for your digestive tract, which means that if you haven't got the right hydrochloric acid, you're not killing off bacteria and viruses in your gut, which means bacteria, viruses, and parasites can get into your gut, which causes more gut issues and more stress on the liver. And then it becomes this whole circular issue of where your body starts not being able to digest food properly, not getting enough minerals, starting to get things that your body can't deal with, such as bacteria and viruses, and it's, again, the perfect storm. So unraveling these things one by one and looking actually with the Post-it notes, as you can probably tell in a hierarchical mindset, actually you can figure out where these things fit in together and what to do to intervene in each area, root cause.
So one of the first things you did was take potassium, and you found that helped the constant peeing.
Yeah. So,
yeah. What were some of the other things that you did that really helped, that were like game changers?
Organic acids test was number one, just because that looks at what you excrete in your pee. And so that would look at things like mycotoxins or candida levels or what's happening on a gut level through to urine. So therefore, actually I've got high levels of yeast in the urine, indicating that there's a leaky gut, which means I should look at fixing my gut lining. And that was because I just had antibiotics for so many months in a row. It basically destroyed my gut. So it's like looking at antifungal protocols, which would be number one. Also, testing your gut microbiome to see which bacteria are actually out of imbalance. And so, for instance, one species of bacteria was almost completely wiped out, and another was overpopulated, showing that there was an imbalance. Now, that actually turned out that as a result of the imbalance, I wasn't, not only was I not digesting properly, I meant I was fermenting foods and bloating. And then by supplementing with the right probiotics and the right diet, you actually bring that balance back in, which means you're not producing so much methane, meaning that you're not bloating so much, and then bloating vanishes. So again, urine, gut microbiome test, those are two things. And then there's various interactions that you have along the way.
Do you remember the specific microbes that were increasing the methane? Or
I knew you were going to ask me that. Off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
But there's like 4 or 5 particular ones that help.
Right. No, they're very difficult to remember. They're like weird names.
They are the very long Latin names, most of them. But
what about, did you retest to see if you were back and down?
Yeah,
you did.
Yeah, multiple times actually. Yeah, it was actually really interesting because I tried loads of natural antifungals, and I tried nystatin and fluconazole over long periods of time and things like that. They all helped. Actually, it helped bring my oxalate levels down in my urine, for instance, because of candida and systemic yeast actually stress the liver, which means that you can't deal with oxalates properly either. And by having antifungal protocol, it helped. But there was always one marker, which it will come to me in a minute, that was always too high in terms of yeasts. I couldn't do anything to bring it down. Everything I tried would not nail it. And then I went keto for a whole year, and going keto and starving out that bacteria actually was the only thing that brought my gut back into alignment with the excess. So,
wow.
Yeah, so it was a long period intervention of dietary that actually was the nail in the coffin for it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think, a lot of people want a pill to fix an ill, and it comes to the same with supplements. Sometimes you've got to say, well, actually it's the lifestyle element that you've got to tackle as well as some intervention. And that's really where the sweet spot was for me.
What metrics do you keep track of on a continuing basis?
Great question. I was known for tracking at 35 points of data every day, and I would have a spreadsheet for this every morning. So even it would cover things like urine pH and specific gravity for hydration levels. It would be subjective energy experience, how I felt out of 1 of 100, again, subjective. It would be basal body temperature, and actually I'd do my temperature 4 times a day and average it over the 4 just to see how my body temperature was fluctuating and level. So there was 35 markers like this that I did, even the Bristol stool scale every day, and how many times I went toilet. So I could track that over a period of time. I did this for nearly 3 years. But what I found was I was hyper alert to everything. I was hypersensitive to how I felt every day instead of just enjoying the ride. And I became very stressed with tracking so many points of data. Mm-hmm. So I learned to let go of it. But what I do track continuously, because it's just so easy and doesn't stress me out, is obviously with my Aura ring. And I'm actually just testing the circular ring right now as well. So I track, obviously, deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep, heart rate variability, resting heart rate, body temperature, respiratory rate, and these things that these rings do, which really helps me keep on track. And then if there's something else that I need to look at, such as my diet, I use the Freestyle Libre constant glucose monitor, and then overlay the Aura data with the constant glucose.
So what are let's go to the Aura bit. What are the things that you found have improved your heart rate variability, your deep sleep, REM sleep?
So the best thing for deep sleep I found is if you're exhausted, you have more deep sleep. But the problem is that's not a sustainable or healthy way of doing it. So for instance, if you have 3 hours sleep or 4 hours sleep, the next day you'll have loads of deep sleep just because you're in exhaustion. So also, if you work out hard, push really hard in the gym, your body is saying, I need more time to repair, thus getting more deep sleep. I find that the best way for me to optimize my REM sleep is if I'm in a blackout room, and that's the same with deep sleep as well, or if I'm testing different hormone therapies, such as at the moment I'm testing progesterone and a fairly good dose of it. And my REM sleep is through the roof. It's like 40% of my sleep stages at the moment. And for 5 nights in a row, my dreams...
And it went from what? Like, what it went from what to what?
So I went from about 12 to 15% REM sleep to 30 to 40% REM sleep almost immediately.
Just from the progesterone?
Yeah, just from progesterone, yeah. And my dreams went from being, once a week to vivid dreams all night, every night. And it's tapering off, actually, because I'm doing it for a whole week test. So, hormones do play into our sleep stages massively, obviously. And I find that what improves the deep sleep and REM sleep in the most sustainable fashion and for health is no or zero or low light exposure after sunset. And it doesn't matter what time of year it is. It's, for instance, candlelight or no lights on in the house and only operating, with my little LED red lights that are dotted around the house for nighttime. After sunset, that helps my sleep the most, and not using devices. Blue blocking glasses are great as an all-rounder fix, but really you're still getting light on your skin, which obviously disrupts your circadian rhythm as well, because our skin is photoreceptive. So complete darkness or low light after sunset. Not eating food after sunset, and if you do after sunset within an hour, let's think primarily again around a campfire. You would probably eat with your friends. So not too late eating. I find that when my deep sleep is at its best, my blood glucose is at its best average low, not super low, because then my body mobilizes glycogen to wake me back up again. And so I'm in and out of the sleep stages. But when I'm in a good average low, blood glucose
during sleep.
Yeah. So I can cross-correlate the blood glucose with deep sleep quite well. So, for instance, last night, the night before I had 6 hours sleep. I actually drunk for the first time in a while. So I had a lot less sleep night before last. And then last night, I was in bed for 10 p.m. and I woke up at 9 a.m., which is why I'm still looking a little bit dazed this morning. But I didn't eat last night. I stopped eating at 4 o'clock, and then I was in bed for 9, 10 o'clock. My blood glucose was super low all night, but not too low, super low. And my deep sleep was off the charts, 1, because I was exhausted, and 2, because my blood glucose was low, and 3, because I didn't have any light after sunset, because I just sat and read on the sofa with my Kindle. So
it's very interesting, the different impacts, because I've also experimented with not eating after sunset. And I guess it depends on what time you're going to sleep. I do go to sleep later because I have to be up for some U.S. communication. So I tend to go to sleep a bit later these days. But I find that if I don't eat like 5 hours before I go to sleep, it's not so much about sunset or not. It's the amount of time before I go to sleep. If I don't eat, if it's more than 5 hours before I go to sleep, I wake up in the middle of the night, or I wake up too early. Mm-hmm. So that cuts my sleep shorter. Mm. And the reason is, I'll wake up hungry a bit because I haven't eaten. If it's 5 hours and then I'm sleeping, let's say for 8 hours, all of a sudden I'm not eating for 13 hours. I could start feeling hungry in the morning. So that's kind of I try to and then I've obviously also done eating closer to bedtime. And that's not good. That's bad. Mm-hmm. Meaning my sleep metrics go down. I don't sleep as well. But so it's kind of like a sweet spot. I'm curious what you think of that.
I think that if you were to change your circadian rhythm or your daily lifestyle over the space of 3 weeks, then you wouldn't have that issue, because it's your body. It shows, in my opinion, it's like you're in between two daily rhythms. If you eat too early, and then you're waking too early, it's showing that you're not aligned with the sun in terms of your sleep process, because your body is going, hang on a minute, it's too early for I need food, so it's say 8 or 7 a.m. But the light is saying, well, actually the sun's not up yet. So it's just for me, that's a misalignment. So if you were to actually be hard and fast on that and have less light exposure in the evening and eat at the same time and keep that consistent for 2 or 3 weeks, you'll find that they would align. I find exactly the same, in all honesty, because it's like, oh shit, my blood glucose is too low. Your body starts mobilizing your liver starts mobilizing glycogen and wakes you up. And this is exactly what I was saying a few minutes ago. So it's just a misalignment between light and your body. And you can calibrate that over
That's definitely true. Like, my body is not aligned with the sun, when the sun comes up, when it goes down. And the reason is because I don't want it to be aligned, because then my time zone would be shifted too much, since I'm in Tel Aviv right now. So that means I wouldn't be able to, meaning if it was more aligned, I'd probably be going to sleep at 10 p.m. and waking up at 6 a.m. or even earlier, maybe 9 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Yeah, it's a valid point. I mean, it's the same with me. I've shifted now because I don't have colleagues in the States that I have calls with at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. anymore. So I've shifted mine back. But you're exactly right. I mean, it's also if you're flying, for instance, from Tel Aviv to the US for 3 days, for instance, you don't want to adjust your circadian rhythm for 3 days. It's best to trick your body and actually use the right things to keep your sleep stages where you are, where you were leaving from, especially if you're going straight back to Tel Aviv. So there are instances where you don't want to be aligned with the sun, but for the most part, you should be for optimal health anyway.
So what time do you go to sleep every night and wake up?
I find about 10:30 is about right for me, optimally. Until I understood all of this stuff, I would sleep at 12:30, 1 o'clock. And in my 20s, I was sleeping at 2, 3 o'clock, something like that. I'm quite light sensitive, and I was watching things like 24 on the computer before I went to bed every night and things like that. So it's like really bad. These days, 10:30 is optimal for me. And then, I have 7 hours, 40 minutes religiously for many years now. And if I have under 7 hours, 40 the next day or the next day after that, I'll catch back up to bring it to an average of 7 hours, 40 minutes. And that seems to be
Do you take naps?
No. Once I'm up. And when I'm in bed, that's it. And I'm gone.
So, I mean, I think that is better. That's definitely healthier. I've done that for a while, and I think it is healthier. I think that, if you're traveling there's kind of 3 different issues for me. One is if I'm working in a bunch of different time zones, or I'm traveling, or, there's some event like party or some kind of thing happening, whereas, it's generally it's not ending at 10:30, right? I mean, it would have to end at like 9 or 8:30. And then I go to, I have to come back home, do whatever, and then, prepare for bed. So it's kind of like, that's what I find a little difficult if you're going out. What do you do if you're going out?
I make an exception. I mean, to be honest, I don't go out. Like, for instance, if I organize a dinner, it'd be 6 p.m., 7 p.m. absolute latest. And I understand that I'm going to pay the price for it. I don't let it stress me out. But
7 p.m. and then you're done at what time, let's say?
Well, I'll probably be done by 8:30 eating. And then, that's kind of like 3 hours before bed. So it's classed as an exception, not the rule. And I don't stress about the exception as long as the exception doesn't become the rule. Otherwise, you just slip into the negative pattern.
So even if you try to just make your social life, build it around doing events earlier, going to sleep earlier.
Yep. Yeah. For instance, if I go on a date or something, rather it'd be 4 or 5 o'clock. Take a walk, go for a bite to eat. That's it. And
right. It won't be at like 9.
Yeah, no chance. Absolutely no chance.
Okay.
I mean, I went out after a conference I was at the weekend, as I mentioned, and went for dinner at 6 p.m. and then finished drinks at like 10 o'clock and then home to bed for 11, which is a fairly late one. But the thing is that I woke up the next day a little bit tired because I had a little bit less sleep because of the alcohol, but still fully functional, just a little bit tired. And I think, isn't it nice when you're on holiday, for instance, if people commonly go on holiday and start drinking at midday or something or other, and they're still in bed for 10 p.m. as normal, and you wake up the next day feeling great. I mean, really, it's the best of both worlds. But it has to be the exception, because I probably drink 4 or 5 times a year tops.
Okay. If you find if you drink during the daytime, it interferes with your sleep at night?
No, depending on the alcohol, really depending on the alcohol. For instance, I only drink Negroni or gin and sparkling water. This is really what I drink. They're my poisons of choice.
Okay.
And if I drink during the day, which is, again, very, very, very rare, I wake up without any effect on my heart rate variability or anything. And I think my liver's had a chance to process everything through the night. Instead of trying to detox my body and detox the alcohol, it's still doing one job because the liver's already dealt with it before you go to bed. And I think that's the same with eating earlier as well. Your body has done its digestive thing as much as it needs to before you go to bed. So it's not spending all the energy digesting and not detoxing you. So therefore you feel crap.
I'd like to highlight our last chance for lifetime access to Self-Decode. Pay once and you get unlimited DNA health reports before we retire our current offers and launch a subscription-only plan. Head over to selfdecode.com and sign up before it's too late. When you're drinking, generally speaking, you're drinking at night. I just never really drank in the daytime. It's just,
yeah.
And so, but every time I drink at night, I notice my sleep is worse. So I decided to just stop drinking completely. Like, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like when you make exceptions, for me, I feel like alcohol is one of those things that if you drink too little, you can still have some of the negative effects on your sleep, right? It's not going to be severe. And you just won't notice any positive benefits. Whereas if you drink too much, you're gonna feel good and you're gonna feel all happy and social and whatever, all the reasons why people drink. But then it's really gonna affect you, right? So I found ways to reduce it and significantly, but the question is it worth the temporary benefit that you're getting from it, right? The temporary high.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, having one drink, there's no point unless it's a strong one. If you're not going to feel tipsy or have a state from it. I mean, again, it depends why you drink.
But even then, you'll feel it for like 5 minutes maybe, and not barely. Maybe not if you drink it with food, you're not going to feel it probably, most people.
I think the bigger question is, why are people drinking? For instance, are people unhappy in life and therefore they want to feel better in the evening? And I think with a lot of us biohacker crowd, we generally feel great, happy, full of energy, positive mindset. We don't need to drink to feel better. Obviously, we do experiment with other various things from time to time, often to work through stuff and whatnot, but it's not because we're unhappy we need to drink. And I think a lot of the general population, and again, pub culture, especially here in the UK, is people go to work 9 till 5, go to the pub afterwards, drink until the evening, go home, wash, rinse and repeat, which is where I was once upon a time. I think they drink to drown out their miserable life. Whereas us guys, we're running companies, we're traveling the world, we're speaking at events, we're popping supplements, we're sharing what we're doing. We're generally quite happy and have positive people around us, and we're not in that day-to-day drinking, smoking circle. So we don't drink for a need or, for some sort of compensation. And when we do, it has to have purpose. And the thing is, their purpose is to keep them happy, whereas we have a whole life built around this. So I do think that there's an element of that. And it's the same with drug users. For instance, biohackers are known to experiment with various chemicals and things like that. We don't necessarily do it to feel high. We do it to work through stuff or understand ourselves better. Whereas general population will take drugs just to get high because they're not so happy in their day-to-day life. And while I appreciate I'm generalizing, I think this is the general rule. And I can speak for myself from when I was a teenager doing lots of different drugs and things because I was a grumpy little teenager that had nothing going for him. These days, it's like I don't have time to do that stuff, and I wouldn't do it just for recreational purpose. So,
yeah, I would say there's 3 reasons why people drink alcohol. I would say one is social pressure, just because if you're in a society that is drinking, most people are drinking and you're like, hey, let's go to a bar. You're not going to want to be the loser and be like, I'm not drinking, right? There's a lot of societal pressure around drinking. I think that's one. Number 2 is, I think a lot of people, I don't know which is number 1 or 2 or 3, I'm just giving 3 reasons, is that people are drowning out their problems. And that's where you get the people who are at risk for being alcoholics, I think. So people who are like, I'm drinking because I don't want to face life, that's where you have the problem of alcoholism. And then you have the people who are just drinking for a good time, for recreation. They're not dependent on it. They just have it as an added benefit to their life. And I think that some biohackers do that. That's why I was doing it. I was drinking, not a lot, but maybe once a week, whatever it was, just as an enhancement. But the reason I stopped is because I decided that when you do something and it has an equal and opposite reaction when you're stopping it, or even worse reaction, right? So let's say you're, 30% happier on alcohol for a few hours, whatever, you're going to be 30% less happy the next day, right? Mm-hmm. Because, just the way it works, it causes changes in the brain that get you more anxiety the next day. And there's ways to blunt that impact, but the question is, do you really, is that something, is that the kind of equation that you want? And so I've only do stuff that doesn't have a negative reaction after. Mm-hmm. So I guess I would like to ask you about that. What kind of things do you do that you feel like don't have, is there any drugs that you feel like don't have a equal and opposite negative reaction after? I mean, if you want to say, if you want to be private about that, you can.
No, it's fine. I think that the term is borrowed energy, or it's borrowed energy. I always think it's like, for instance, if you take something like speed, you have a massive, your mitochondria are working like crazy to produce all this extra energy, and then you have a deficit the next day. And it's the same if you do things like MDMA with your serotonin. You have a massive rush of serotonin, and the next day you have a big dip of it, which is why they call it Suicide Sunday for party goers who are doing MDMA. There are things that can obviously help you bring those levels back up quickly, like megadosing 5-HTP and things like that. So that really does help. And so I think there's always going to be some sort of deficit or deficiency as a result of it. And this is the case in most things. One that I find that doesn't is piracetam or aniracetam or oxiracetam or any of these.
That doesn't really give you a high when you're on it, though.
Well, it depends. I think that if I'm generally choline deficient, and for instance, people that have take one of these smart drugs like piracetams, it draws on your choline, acetylcholine, which is why it helps the brain fire up so much better. I find if I'm low in it and I don't supplement with acetylcholine, then I'll get a migraine from piracetam, which is quite common apparently. So I find that if I supplement with that and piracetam, then I don't have an issue and it's not borrowed energy. And I find that again, I'm dopamine dominant, but also very high with choline as well in terms of my neurotransmitters. So I burn through it pretty quickly. I find that it works super well for me for my cognition, and I feel like I am energized from it. Whenever I take it, I notice myself bouncing down the road. My brain is even happier than usual. It's not just a smart drug for me. So I find that that's one for that. The other thing,
there's no opposite reaction when you're off of it?
No, none for me personally. The other one is if I microdose with LSD, for instance, I don't find that I have any negative reaction or loss from it. But I think that is because I only microdose with it. And
what do you consider a microdose?
So about 20 micrograms, something like that. 20
micrograms.
Yeah, and a full dose being 200 micrograms. Okay. So I would, when I'm in a country where it's legal, do it every 3 days typically, and I find that works very well.
Which countries is it legal in?
I can't remember now. But there's also various other compounds that are very similar to LSD that haven't been categorized as illegal yet as well, which you can actually find on the internet. Not that I'm advocating the use of LSD by any means. Okay. I find that, again, psilocybin, so from mushrooms, again, that is typically legal, much more legal in many places now, especially in places like Amsterdam.
What percentage, a lot of entrepreneurs like me, what percent of entrepreneurs do you think take LSD or psychedelics in general?
The successful ones, probably 40% of them, I reckon.
40%.
Yeah, a lot of people in the Bay Area, for instance, take it. Like one guy, very successful, said that he takes it every day of the week, Monday through Friday, microdose LSD. And I think his micro is more of a mid. And this is very, very common, I think. Psilocybin, again.
I feel like it's more than 50%, 40%. Really? By the way. Yeah, I would say it's probably maybe even more than 50. Well, not as a daily thing or a weekly thing, but just people think about it. I mean, almost everybody, I would say most people at Burning Man are doing some kind of psychedelic at some point there.
But there's a difference between at some point and on a recurring basis, I think. And
so you're saying 40% on a recurring basis?
Yeah, at least once a week, I would say. And this is
okay. Okay. So I would agree with you there then.
We've got Steve Jobs to thank for this, because obviously he talks about his trips using LSD and how he came up with super ideas. And obviously it was such a big role model, successful role model. People kind of listen to that and flock towards it as usual, the usual guru effect. So I find that LSD microdosing is one of those things. I find aniracetam or equivalents don't have any of those issues. MDMA.
Do you notice the effect when you're taking 20 micrograms of LSD?
Yes and no, depends, actually. I can't correlate what the difference is, but some diet. So this comes from a friend and a speaker of the summit, so Dr. Jack Locker. He's a pharmacologist. He's experimented with many different chemicals. He's an expert in a lot of these things. He once gave a talk at Baby Bathwater, actually, about LSD and how if you look at LSD as a compound, a normal dose, say, for instance, there's 10 chemical reactions that happen at full dose. When you half the dose, it doesn't half the chemical reactions. It actually changes the compound, actually changes how it affects the body. So when it's on a microdose, actually, you don't get the visual effects at all. You actually only get some of the cognitive benefits, but not the visual elements, okay? One thing that I've noticed, and I can't, again, correlate it, but for some reason, on a microdose, 1 out of every 10 times, I will start getting some visuals.
Interesting. Wow.
And only very slightly, like I'll be looking at something and I'll be like, oh, I can't quite focus on that quite right. And, it's almost like jumpy a little bit digital. So, and I'm trying to think if there's any others that I have this that aren't really borrowed energy. As I was saying, like MDMA definitely borrows. It definitely have a deficit as a result. Obviously, cocaine is probably the biggest toxic thing I would never go near it again.
I would agree. Yeah, all those drugs have borrowed energy. What about ketamine? You think ketamine is borrowed energy?
Depends on the dose. I think actually an indicator with ketamine is if it's good, clean ketamine, then you can go to bed an hour after doing it and sleep perfectly. And in fact, your sleep stages are fine. I've used ketamine quite a few times now. I was actually prescribed it for therapy, and I find it to be very, very good. And it doesn't affect my sleep. Actually,
it doesn't affect mine either.
It negatively affects. It does positively.
Yeah. It positively affects your sleep?
Yeah, it does, yeah. My REM sleep is up another 4 or 5%, something like that, but nothing major. But it's just more that it doesn't affect negatively. But again, like how frequently are you doing it? What's the dose that you're doing it, et cetera, what time of day, and things like that.
Right, interesting. I mean, yeah, it's something that's new for me that I'm experimenting with, I guess. But I only take low doses. I don't think you need high doses.
What sort of dose are you taking?
That's a good question. I would say, I think it's like, well, the dose is also different whether you snort it or take it by mouth, right? Mm-hmm. So, I think I'm taking like, I don't know, maybe 30 milligrams by snorting.
Yeah. Okay. So I had it subcutaneously. So it's obviously
right. The doses are all different depending on how you're taking it. There's snorting,
it's 100 milligrams per 100 milliliters. So I have 0.15 milliliters, which gives me 15 milligrams. But I can go up to 25, and then that's a nice amount without getting high and off the planet. This is
right. Yeah. No, you're completely. Yeah. That's the thing is that I don't take large doses of it, and I don't find it has any impact on my sleep. I don't know if I took it last night, and my sleep was very good. I don't know if it was because of that. Like, it's something that I need to keep seeing, but it's not a recommendation for people to take ketamine. It's just, I would say we're advanced people when it comes to this area, and we try a lot of different things, and we do it in a very safe way, in properly measuring the dose exactly, and we know what we're doing. I think that's very key. Like, most people, if they think about psychedelics, it's somebody's giving them a tab and they don't know what the hell the dosage is, and then they just take that tab. You really have to measure the dose properly, and you have to do it in the correct way in order for you to 100%. Really benefit.
I would not recommend people mess around or test even ketamine, because it can be life-altering. And I think the only reason I did it actually was because I was with people in a measured setting. It wasn't something off the street. It was pharmaceutical quality. It was measured. I was around the right people. And I was always scared to go near it because I heard of the K-hole, which, is a pretty nasty place to be in, apparently. But when you realize that super measured dose in the right setting for the right reasons, for instance, I have it actually for migraines, and it ties in down to the glutamate receptors, and something that I'm working on with my gut at the moment specifically, and dialing it in. That's the only reason I'm using it, and that's why it's been prescribed for me. And it's a very, very new therapy.
Yeah. Have you ever tried mescaline?
No.
No. It's actually my favorite of the psychedelics.
Really?
So, yeah, LSD has a little bit of, I'll tell you, I take about 50, 60 micrograms of LSD. Mm-hmm. It depends what I'm trying to do. If it's more just for, like, if I wanted to take it at work, or I wanted to get stuff done still, I would maybe take 30 micrograms. So not too different from what you're taking. If I'm taking it on the weekend for recreation, then I would go to 60 micrograms. That's what I found as like a proper recreational dose without getting any visuals. So it's below the visual threshold. I think if you're getting visuals, that means you took too much, which might be fine under certain settings and proper supervision, and assuming you know your body well and your dosing and all that stuff. But for me, I find that's the amount without visuals, and that works for me. I don't like getting too much. If I'm getting visuals, it's a problem. The litmus test for me, by the way, I have an interesting litmus test. If I can't play volleyball very well, then I took too much.
Nice.
So, I have like this new tradition that I do where every week, I just started it. We'll see how long it continues, but every week on Saturday, I take mescaline in the morning, right when I wake up.
Nice.
So I take mescaline in the morning, and an hour later I play volleyball. So in the peak, you start feeling the effect an hour later, and I'm playing volleyball. And what I found is that it actually improves my game. So I'm playing volleyball better than I was before. Nobody has any idea I took any mescaline. And the reason I like mescaline is because LSD has, it has the benefits of the psychedelics, but I feel like there's a certain kind of heaviness to it. Same with mushrooms. So it's not about whether it's natural. There's a certain kind of heaviness to it, which could be interesting if you're, trying to, meaning like there's, when I say heaviness, it's heaviness on the body, but also there's an anxiety, like it's theoretically, you can feel that there's a possibility for anxiety on it, right? I don't know if you get that. You're probably not at 20 micrograms. But the mescaline has none of that. So I don't feel any heavy, like there's no, meaning like the LSD, I don't feel any negative effects when you're off of it. And the benefit is that after 12 hours, I don't notice it. So it goes away quicker. Whereas the mescaline, when I'm on it, there's no possibility almost for anxiety for me, right? And so, and it also lasts for 16 hours. that's why I take it right in the morning so that I can go to sleep 16 hours later and still get, full night's rest.
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, the litmus test is, can I play volleyball on this thing? And volleyball, you have to, you're hitting the ball. You have to do it with precision. You have to be extremely precise. And if you're getting visuals, you're not going to be doing that correctly. And I find that it actually improves my game, even at a reasonably high dosage. Like, at a reasonable dosage. So I feel like, whereas if I played on alcohol, MDMA, or anything else, I would be just like, what the hell's going on here? Or weed would be the worst, I think, right? I'd be like, running around. I don't know what would be going on. But I feel like any of these other drugs, you play volleyball, you're going to play much worse.
Yeah, interesting litmus test.
Do you ever do megadosing experiments with supplements?
Yes, not as much as you do, but definitely have done with many things.
Like what? Give me examples.
My favorite experiment was trimethylglycine, like 6 grams before bed.
Right before bed?
Yeah, right before bed. Okay. And I found that it worked very, very well for 6 days, and then it dropped off the face of a cliff. What happened specifically was my heart rate variability doubled. So there's a whole methylation component going on here, as usual. And then I could then carry on with 2,000 milligrams, so 2 grams of trimethylglycine ongoing. But then after about 3 weeks, it would do absolutely nothing at all. And then, I'd have to wait a couple of months until I could add it in again, and I'd have the same pattern over and over again. So that's one of the ones that I really liked. And what was another one?
I feel like when I added it in right before I went to sleep, it worsened my sleep a little. Whereas when I added it in during the day, it was beneficial.
Interesting. I mean,
because it can increase dopamine and increase serotonin, dopamine, and you don't want your dopamine to be too high when you're sleeping.
It really depends on your methylation, on what combination of SNPs you have, I think, because the methyl donors for me, obviously, I'm sucking them up and going, I need these bad boys. I need these bad boys for critical processes. Whereas for you, you've probably got a very different profile to me. So therefore not needing them for the same reasons, and therefore upregulating things. Whereas for me, they're actually baselining things. So I think that's probably with the trimethylglycine experiment.
That could be. I mean, I do need the methyl stuff. I find that the stuff that increases methylation, and also there's some genes that, tell me that I need some more stuff, including the MTHFR gene and some other things. So I do well with methylation supplements. And what about do you do well with methylfolate?
Yeah, I do actually, very well. I find that that's probably my most favorite one of the lot, long term anyway. But again, that can put too much stress on the body if you go too high, too fast with it. And
what do you take there?
I average at 2 milligrams now, but I did try up to 20 milligrams at one point, but that was just too much. I noticed actually that it supports the liver pretty well, because when I start it, my digestion changes, my liver changes quite significantly. But to start with, my stool will be lighter, more orangey, and then over a period of time it rebalances and it gets darker again. So it's almost like it's drawing on something in terms of detoxification, which stresses the liver, and then it settles and it becomes normal again. So there's definitely a massive liver component for me for methylfolate specifically.
How many supplements do you take a day?
Not as many as you, mate. Right now, I saw your Instagram a few days ago and I was just like, holy shit. At one point I was taking about 40 or 50 different supplements a day, just trying all these different things and whatnot and seeing how I felt. And that was just through desperation of trying to feel better. But the more and more I become dialed in, the less and less I tend to have, because you can't, one supplement might be able to be tracked with what's going on, but when you have multiple, all with having different effects, not only do they overlap in terms of what they do to you, they also have chemical effects across each other. So I like to go simple. At the moment, this week, I'm actually taking only progesterone before bed and pregnenolone on waking in at lunchtime. And I take a DAO enzyme because I have the double genetic component of DAO, or should I say histamine, H1, H2 issues. So I take a DAO enzyme to stop with the stuffy nose and the migraines and things like that from histamines. So yeah, I mean, typically I would take about 8 to 10 supplements, something like that, overall.
On a day?
Yeah.
And do you cycle them, or you just take them out?
Yeah, I like to pulse them, first of all. So pulsing is in the short term. So for instance, 5 of 7 days of most of them, so that my body just doesn't get used to having them. But in terms of cycle, yes and no. I mean, really, I only take supplements based on what I actually need, opposed to subjective things. So if I'm working on something, I'll take it. If I'm not working on something, I won't. And usually I'm quite diagnostic with the various tests that I have as a result.
Okay, so I know you like, so you mentioned the progesterone, pregnenolone, trimethylglycine. Those are some of the things you're taking. Methylfolate. I feel like we already hit on 4 of the 10.
Yeah.
What are some of the other ones? Methylene blue?
Yeah, definitely methylene blue. Yeah, I really like that. I typically have had oxygenation issues, and I think that's just through a lifelong been breathing through my mouth my whole life, opposed to using my nose, and that's partly because of my histamine issues with a stuffy nose. And also I had a couple of root canal treated teeth here, which caused inflammation in the sinus lining. So not only did I have blocked nose, I also had other things going on there. So I couldn't breathe freely. So therefore my mouth would then be default. So that obviously then affects nitric oxide production, which vasodilation, which causes tension in the body and headaches and things like that. So by adjusting my breath work, focusing on nose breathing, and using methylene blue, which helps you utilize oxygen better. This is one of the reasons why I love methylene blue. I'm actually taking a week off this week from it, just because my amylase levels were quite high on testing last week, showing that something's going on with my pancreas. So I just want to drop everything for a week and just see what's going on there.
What dose did you take of the methylene blue?
8 milligrams, sometimes 2 to 3 times a day.
Oh, wow. That's a very large dosage.
Yeah. Well, the thing is with methylene blue, and it's dependent on the dose. It's very, very dependent on the dose. Every accident and emergency care ward has methylene blue on IV as part of their standard kit because of carbon monoxide poisoning. I think it's part of the World
Health Organization list.
Yeah. And that's because it's so efficient at helping oxygen utilization in the body and dealing with carbon monoxide and things like this. And I think on low dose of 8 milligrams, I think 8 milligrams is the sweet spot personally. And this is what the Troscriptions things, trochees have. I actually also buy the drops, which I can buy from Germany, and also from a compounding pharmacy from South Africa. And I find it's very, very good. And some days I find that completely clear, absolute clarity, and other days it doesn't work so much. And I find that if I sleep with the window open and there's fresh air coming in, I feel better in the morning, and methylene blue doesn't do anything. If I sleep with the window closed, the carbon dioxide is higher, oxygen is lower, methylene blue really helps me. So for me, it's a good one. And I think so anyone that can't hold their breath for too long, can't swim underwater for too long, is using their mouth for breathing too much, then methylene blue is a good thing to try.
And 8 milligrams 2 to 3 times a day?
It's pretty,
have you tried 1 milligram and saw what that did?
Yeah, it doesn't really do much for me. It doesn't really do much at all. And I always found the difference with Troscriptions, and I only use just blue. I don't like the nicotine, the caffeine, and the CBD ones. I just like methylene blue on its own. The 8 milligrams when I had a full trochee in one go.
Is there any negative impacts for 8 milligrams to your knowledge?
Don't know. I mean, from everything I've read, and the amount that they use in a hospital setting, IV, which is, we're talking, I think it's like 150, 200 milligrams, something like that.
Wow.
From memory, don't quote me on that, makes me think that an oral dose of 8 milligrams is pretty safe. especially if the hospital's using it, because usually hospitals use it at a minute amount of toxic levels by standard anyway.
And do you take that like if you have an infection, or because obviously it's an antimicrobial?
Yeah, antimicrobial, antifungal, potentially an antiviral as well, which you can Google recent pandemic stuff online with methylene blue and some trials that there were. Not to mention the name, but
do you think that part of the reason it's helping you is by combating infections in your body?
Possibly, yeah. Again, because of my digestive issues, liver stress, and whatnot, then I had been susceptible to certain viruses. So it could be helping me with that. I also found, actually, really interestingly, that because of my kidney stones and urinary tract infections and things from yesteryear, methylene blue helps quite a lot with that. And I think also with the yeast levels or candida levels, obviously your pee goes green or slightly blue. And if you're taking certain vitamin Bs, then it goes fluorescent green. So you know that your kidneys are dealing with it. And I seem to feel great for it.
Awesome. And so what else are you taking?
You
take vitamins like B12, I'm assuming?
I've stopped them. I've stopped that at the moment, actually. I usually take Methylguard by Thorn because it has trimethylglycine, methylcobalamin, and methylfolate, the three together, with a bit of riboflavin, which I find works very well for me. But I've paused that at the moment because I was actually over-methylating. And I noticed this because I start getting super sensitive teeth in the upper jaw every time when I'm over-methylating. And I have the same effect when I take too much SAMe, S-A-M-E, as well, which is obviously the end process of methylation, pretty much.
Do you check your homocysteine levels when like what's your homocysteine level?
It's absolutely optimal every time. I've never had.
What is it like when you're not taking it?
It's absolutely fine. My homocysteine
even if you're
levels,
not okay. So
absolutely fine.
What you're saying is that you're not really able. You're saying that you're an undermethylator. You like methylation, but that undermethylation is not being shown by high homocysteine.
Yeah, exactly. My homocysteine has always been absolutely textbook bang in the middle. Never too high, never too low, always consistently.
Does it go lower when you take too much methylation?
No, never changes. Whatever I've done, it always stays the same. So my body's compensating or dealing with it somehow, yeah.
Because that's the typical textbook stuff, like how to know if you have enough methylation based on what your homocysteine is like. But
it's often very common for girls. I've seen in girls specifically where they have high homocysteine, they start taking trimethylglycine and it comes down beautifully very quickly. It doesn't affect me like that for some reason. But I find with trimethylglycine, to go back to that, my energy production goes through the roof, and I find that you don't consider energy anymore. It's just something you have. It's not something you're deficient in anymore.
Sounds good. Okay. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the podcast, Tim. You had quite a lot of good nuggets that I've been able to learn from, and some experiments that I'm going to be doing from that. I'm going to try increasing my methylene dosage, my methylene blue dosage. I'm going to try progesterone drops, see how that works out. There's some other things that I'm going to try as well. But it's been a real pleasure to speak to you. Is there anything that you wanted to say before we go?
Come to the Health Optimisation Summit next year, June 17th and 18th in London, and meet 2,000 biohackers like us and try out all the gadgets.
And I'm going to be there as well, so I obviously recommend coming. It's a great summit. Had a lot of fun last year. And
awesome.
I look forward to seeing everybody there. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to leave a review and also like and subscribe for more great content.